Welcome to the Private Practice Alchemy video podcast series, where I help you work smarter and earn more in your ideal therapy practice. I'm your alchemist and host, Jennifer Kennett.
My guest today is my good friend Nikki Rausch, CEO of Your Sales Maven. With over 25 years of experience selling to such prestigious organizations as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Hewlett-Packard, and NASA, Nikki has shattered sales records in many industries, receiving multiple top producer awards along the way. Entrepreneurs and small business owners from a wide range of disciplines now hire Nikki to show them how to sell successfully and authentically without being pushy or salesy. Nikki's 3 popular books are available at Amazon, and her podcast, Sales Maven, can be found on your favorite podcast platform. Today, we're diving into why therapists in private practice need to accept that we are actually engaging in sales conversations, and how to do so using the unique skills we already possess to build authentic relationships. Hi, and welcome back to Private Practice Alchemy. I'm Jennifer Kennett. I am your private practice alchemist. And today I am interviewing Nikki Rausch. And Nikki is the CEO of Sales Maven, an organization dedicated to authentic selling. And Nikki has the unique ability to transform a misunderstood process of selling. Now, I've known you, Nikki, for, I think it's been 5 or 6 years now. And my first introduction to you was, I think, through Business Among Moms at the Success Summit. And I remember sitting in the audience listening to you talk and going, oh, wow, this woman gets it. And I need to know more of what she does, because you were talking about sales in a way that was so warm and connected and relational. And as a therapist, you really opened my eyes to the fact that I was having sales conversations and I didn't realize it. So welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very honored that you asked. And yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. You are having sales conversations. And, as you may have heard me say before, and I say this often, sales is not something that you do to somebody. Sales is something you do with somebody. And when you start treating it like this is a collaborative experience, this is about talking with you, not talking at you. It takes some of that like angst and that selling out of the mix and allows for real, true conversation and connection to happen. And sales, as a result, bringing revenue into the business.
Right. And that's, I think, the piece that is so crucial is all of us, every single one of us, is in business to, at some level, make money. Now, I get there's lots and lots of therapists, including me, where money isn't the primary motivator. At the same time, if I'm not making money as a business owner, I'm going to start feeling resentful and overwhelmed. So yeah, having healthy, good sales relationships and sales conversations makes my job as a therapist easier. So I'm curious, what have you heard as the biggest fears or myths about the sales process? What are the big ones that stand out?
Well, some of the big ones are, first of all, is I can't sell because people are going to judge me and they're going to think I'm salesy and I'm gross and I'm just trying to get something out of them. That's a myth that it's a myth in that maybe you have experience, you've been on the receiving end of somebody who has tried to sell to you that way. And yet that really is not the effective way to sell. The other thing is, here's a big one. We'll see what you think about this one. Oftentimes people go, I don't really want to sell anybody. I'm just here to be of service. I just want to educate people about, therapy or about a modality that's going to help them in some way. Which the myth behind this is if you're not strategic in the conversation and make it really easy for that person to sign up to work with you, get on your schedule, get that session scheduled with you, you are doing a disservice to them. And they're now going to miss out on working with you because it's not their job to decide, here's my money, take it. It's your job to earn it. And you have to do that through conversation and being strategic in the way you issue invitations, the way that you make it super easy for people to get what it is that they need to make a difference in their life. And that means getting on your schedule, paying you money, showing up for their appointment, and you delivering the best of the best to them.
Right. And I think I remember that was one of the pieces that you really blew my mind on, was the idea of buying signals. And you've got, I know, a million stories about this where you'll be in a conversation with somebody about something you actually want, like you as an individual, Nikki, I want that thing. And the person will talk to you about it, but then they miss that you're wanting to actually take the next step, and they for whatever reason don't invite you, and you're kind of like, oh, I guess they don't want my money.
Yeah.
And when I realized that, like, there are so many conversations that I've had with people where it's very clear they're interested in what I have to say, but it wasn't until I heard you talk about buying signals that I saw it for what it was. So tell me, and tell my audience, what do we look for when it comes to buying signals? What are they, and how do we see them?
Well, okay. So first of all, a buying signal is a verbal or nonverbal cue that somebody gives that indicates interest. Now, sometimes the buying signal is such a big, strong buying signal that it's like, hey, I want to pay you money. And oftentimes people miss it because they don't want to seem salesy, or they're not paying attention, or they don't know what a buying signal is. And so they go like, hey, we'll go check out my website, or, you can book an appointment through my online scheduling system, or whatever it is that they say that actually doesn't pick up the buying signal and act on it immediately. So I'll give you some examples of buying signals. And the idea is that when you get a buying signal from a prospective client, even if you're unsure, and I would say in your case, prospective patient, right? If you refer to
client.
Okay, so client. So from a prospective client, if you don't act on the buying signal when you get it, they may walk away and go and work with somebody else who isn't going to serve them the way that you serve them, and or never actually get whatever it is that they need help with resolved, because they don't really know how to articulate what that next logical step is with you. That's your job.
Yeah.
So when you get a buying signal, your job is to act on it and invite the person to the next step. Check it out and see, is this a real buying signal? And the way you do that is by issuing an invitation. So I'll give you some examples of really often missed buying signals. So one would be that somebody asks you a question about some modality or something that they could get help with. Like, for instance, they'll often frame it like they're talking about somebody else, but like they have an invisible friend, but they're actually asking for themselves in some way. So they might say, so if somebody was struggling with, night terrors, for instance, I'm just making up stuff that somebody would.
Fair enough.
Is that okay? So if somebody was struggling with night terrors, is that something that they would see a therapist for? Right. And so that's a potential buying signal. They're not asking for somebody else necessarily. Maybe it's somebody in their family, but oftentimes they're asking for themselves, but they don't know how to say, I struggle with night terrors, and I'm wondering, is that something that seeing a therapist might help me kind of figure out what's going on, what's causing these, and what should I do about them?
Right.
Like, most people don't know how to articulate it that well. So they ask a question like, do people like see a therapist for night terrors?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you get that potential buying signal, I want you to go, oh, buying signal. I need to
ding,
act
ding,
on
ding.
it. Exactly. Ding, ding, ding. So then you go, oh, well, absolutely. That is something that I work with clients on. Now, is there something that I might be able to support you with? Or is there a question that you have that I might be able to answer for you here? Now, you don't want to get into like giving them therapy on the spot, right? Like, don't do that. But if they're like, well, yeah, actually, this is something that I struggle with, then you go, great. My suggestion would be for us to book an appointment and have you come in and see me as a client. Is that something you'd be open to? Now, I just issued this really kind invitation that, frankly, if I'm the person who is struggling with night terrors, I don't even know how I came up with that example. Maybe I need to talk to you about night terrors. I'm not sure. But if that's the thing, now you've made me feel really comfortable. And now you've made it really easy for me to say, oh yeah, actually, I would like to get an appointment with you. Or even to say, yeah, I'm not quite ready, but I appreciate you letting me know so I can back away from it if it wasn't like I'm not quite ready yet. But oftentimes people don't know they're ready until the invitation is issued.
Yeah.
So bringing up like a topic like that as a potential buying signal. Another one is for somebody to give you a compliment,
Mhm.
something about your work, something about what you do. For instance, they might say something like, "Oh, I read up on your or I saw your bio, Jennifer, and I know some of the things that you do, and it's just I know you're making such a impact in the world for people, and just, so happy to meet you." Well, that's a really nice compliment. And maybe you don't hear a potential buying signal in there, but you should still check it out. You might say, "Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Is there some way that I might be a resource to you?" And you just let it kind of sit out there nice and soft. You even sometimes do this like upward hand gesture, like, "Is there some way I might be a resource to you?" And they go, "Well, actually, are you accepting new clients?" And now you get to say, "Yes, I am," or whatever that next step is. And then you invite them. So if you are accepting new clients, you would say, "Yes. And the easiest way for us to schedule a session would be to do this. Should we go ahead and do that now?"
Yeah.
And you issue that invitation. So that's another like really common and often missed buying signal. I'm
Yeah.
going to give one more if I can.
Absolutely.
Okay. So here's another one that oftentimes people are shocked to recognize it as a buying signal, but it's that they bring up a negative experience with a form, like with some type of therapy that they've been through in some case. Now, here's why it's a potential buying signal, because they're looking for you to not convince them that they're wrong, or not even jump down in the pit and go like, "Oh my gosh, that's terrible that you had this horrible experience," and blah, blah, blah. It's looking for some reassurance from you in some way about how there is a different way to handle therapy, or how they could have a new experience. So if somebody comes up and they're like, "Oh, I hear I hear you see clients on this particular topic. I struggled with that, early on in my life, and I just never really could find a therapist that I felt like I ever had any resolution." So in that particular case, you might say, "I'm so sorry that was your experience." Oftentimes when I work with my clients, we focus in these key areas, and we tend to get really great results. Is that something you'd be open to exploring? And then you
Yeah.
wait and you see what they say. Oftentimes they'll be like, "Yes, I am open to exploring it because you just made me feel really comfortable, and you made it really easy for me to say yes, and let's do something here."
Yeah. I One of the things that I so love about how you approach this, Nikki, is that you've got such a gentleness and a warmth and a compassion to you. And I think from a therapist's perspective, like you'd make a fantastic therapist for that reason.
Thank you.
Um, and it is not that far of a leap to go from what we do clinically to these kinds of conversations that you're talking about. It's very much from the same mindset. It's about building rapport.
Yes.
And what I love is that you are creating a tentativeness in the conversation that allows them to say no without feeling like they're going to be judged or that they are judging you. And
Yes.
that is, I think, an important piece as well. It's the chances are very good they will say yes when you invite them in that way. And if they say no, it's not a relationship challenge. It's like, oh, okay, that's not what you're needing right now. We can continue this conversation in positive ways and still feel like we're ending this interaction in a comfortable way.
Yeah. Sometimes, and I do teach this too, is like giving people an easy opportunity to say no, because for some people, saying no is difficult. I would
Hmm.
imagine that that might be something that you actually talk with your clients about, right? Of like
Yeah.
being able to say no to things. So for some people, it is difficult. So your job is to not make it hard for them or make them feel pressured in any way. Sometimes giving them an easy opportunity to say yes or no
Hmm.
is the best way to keep the relationship intact. And then when and if the answer is no, you just proceed on in the conversation. You could change the topic, but you send the message like, I care about you as a person and we're okay. I'm not offended in any way. Because I don't know if you've ever found yourself in a situation, I certainly have, where I have kindly said no to somebody and had them be like, what? You're saying no? Like, you're not going to do this? Like, how can you, like, what's wrong with you as a person?
How can you live with
and then
yourself?
yeah. And then you feel really judged and you feel bad. And now you're like, well, the one thing I can guarantee is every single person who's ever made me feel less than or who's been offended by a no never has the opportunity to earn my business again. But somebody who I have declined to work with because I'm not ready yet, or for whatever reason, timing is off, I can't
Yeah.
afford it yet, whatever it is, who has treated me like I still matter to them, I'm still a person, and the relationship is still important. When my situation has changed, they're the first people that I go back and hire because I felt like they care about me. They're not treating me like I'm a walking wallet. And
Yeah.
I feel really good about this relationship. And therefore, it's easy to go back to them. And I don't have to feel awkward or weird because they've made it super comfortable.
And it was always something that mattered to me was the therapeutic alliance. And this is something that in research and in counseling is really important. In fact, it's far more important than anything else in terms of the change process. It meant so much to me. And yet when I started in private practice, I was trying to figure out how do I communicate that to my clients? And I think it was after I talked to you that I started incorporating that here's a way of saying no. So I do consults. Not all therapists do it, but I offer a short period of time where I'll talk to somebody about what they're looking for. I invite them to ask questions about my training. And at the very end, I always now say, so there are 3 options for us moving forward. You may be sitting here today going, yes, I'm ready to get started. And great, we can schedule your next session. You may need to think about it, and that's fine. If that's the case, I'd like to check in with you, close the loop. I think that was the phrase that I learned from you,
Yeah.
and give them a day and time. And then, or the third possibility is that you may be sitting here going, she's nice, but she's not the right fit for me. And if that's the case, I want you to say no, because it is more important for you to feel comfortable as a client with that I'm the right person for you. And so if you say to me, no, thank you, I am going to 100% help you find somebody who will be a good fit for you. And my conversion rate after that conversation is incredibly high.
Yeah.
And I think it's exactly that. It's that I'm giving them permission to say no, and so they can trust that the yes will be something that they're wholeheartedly behind.
Well, the other thing about that, I love that, that's so beautiful, is it shows such a deep respect for them as a person and their ability to make a good decision for themselves. And I think when you treat people like, I honor who you are and that you know what's best for you, and I'm just going to make an offer here for you and you can decide yes or no either way, then I think it's just such a level of respect, and it builds that know, like, and trust. More importantly, that trust factor here of like, oh, here's somebody who isn't treating me like I'm a wallet, who I feel like they're standing in integrity, and therefore, I mean, who doesn't want to work with somebody who shows up with integrity? I know those are the people I flock to, and those are the people who I happily pay money to. The
Mm-hmm.
people who show up with a level of integrity. It matters. It all counts. And so the way that you just laid that out, it's so beautiful and it's so easy, and it doesn't feel like there's judgment around it, and it's not them saying like, well, you're a bad therapist. It's just it's not the right fit, and that's okay. I often will say too, like, I teach my clients this all the time. Sometimes we just have to bless and release the people who aren't the right fit, and bless and release to me is a much nicer way than saying like, kick those people to the curb. Like, let's make it kind, let's
Yeah.
make it easy and see
Yeah.
what happens. And in your case, like you said, you have a very high conversion rate because people appreciate that. They trust it. It feels good. There's
Yeah.
integrity behind it, and there's authenticity behind it as well, which is also super important in sales.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about your background and like, how did you become a sales coach? Because I think that's an important story.
Well, I started in sales right in college. I got my first professional sales job and was like a dialing for dollar type sales position where it was the outbound. You had to make, 40 to 60 calls a day. And it was that whole thing. Um, and it was in the technology space and I had a lot of success. I ended up like moving up, becoming the national sales manager, and then moving on to like the manufacturer level of the selling, and had a lot of success there. And during like my first job working for one of the largest companies in the world, I also started studying neurolinguistic programming. And
Mm.
with the idea that, oh my gosh, if maybe a lot of the people listening are probably familiar with NLP in some way. And I started studying it thinking like, it'll make me a better salesperson because my style of selling has always been about building relationships, and I've never been the aggressive like let's go hunt big game and like bring in these huge, like just never has fit my
It's
style.
just not
And I
you.
worked in a very male dominated area, like the industry I was in was very male dominated, and so learning how to apply the techniques I was learning for neurolinguistic programming to the relationships that I was building in my sales, it really, I mean, amplified my sales big time, and I had a lot of success there. And I found that my work in NLP not only made me a better salesperson, just made me a much better communicator. And as a result of being a better communicator, I improved a lot of relationships in my life. I found that I had deeper connections with people, my, friends and family. We had a much different level of communication. And so that really went well. And then at some point, I kind of got a little bit disillusioned with the like selling, constant selling. And I started feeling like, there should be something a little more fulfilling in my life. I don't know what that is, but I'm super interested in it. And at the time, I had an opportunity to go help my NLP teacher build her business in the Seattle area. And that was when I started networking. And I started meeting all these really cool people like you at networking meetings. And I found that oftentimes a lot of them struggled with sales conversations. They didn't know how to recognize buying signals. They didn't know how to ask for the sale. They didn't know like what to say when there was an objection. And that was the stuff that, I'd had this extensive background in sales. I knew how to do. I could take my NLP work and I could apply it so that I could teach people how to do it in a way that landed softly, was really kind, that built rapport. And really, it was from a networking meeting where I met a woman who I was helping on the side, and she was like, "Why are you not doing this as a business? Like, why are you not teaching, women how to sell?" And I was like, "I don't think anybody would pay me for that. Like, that seems super easy and too easy to get paid for." And, here I am
The
seven
rest
and a
is
half years
history.
later. Yes. Having the time of my life working with the coolest people, entrepreneurs and, therapists and coaches and counselors and, you know, people that are doing the craziest, most exciting things around the world. And it's just been a really great experience to teach people how to sell in a way that doesn't feel icky, gross, pushy, but instead feels relationship, rapport, authentic. So
Awesome. So you have a book. I know you have 3 books. I
I do
know
have 3
one of
books.
them is Buying Signals, which is amazing, and I absolutely recommend people get it. Your most
Thank you.
recent book is The Selling Staircase, correct?
Yep.
So can you walk me through what is the selling staircase for my audience?
So the selling staircase is my signature framework for a sales conversation. And I teach the sales conversation as having 5 steps. And the objective of the selling conversation is to understand what step am I on with this person I'm in conversation with, and what do I need to do or say to move them in a really nice way to the next step so that we eventually get to the place where we exchange dollars for services or product, whichever it is that you're selling. So the 5 steps of the selling staircase, step 1 is the introduction step. This is your job in step 1 to make a powerful first impression, build rapport and connection. And once you've done that, it's easy to move to step 2, which is creating curiosity. This is the most misstep, by the way, in the selling staircase. Most people don't understand how to create curiosity. And yet, when you can create curiosity in the mind of the person you're in conversation with, it allows for a lot of really great conversation to happen, and buying signals tend to come in this step. Once we have got through the curiosity, they've given us some buying signals, super easy to move to step 3 in the sales conversation, which is the discovery step. This might be like your example of that you do a consultation. So this is what's happening there. You're understanding what's the problem, what's the need, what's the thing, what's the want here, and making sure that you're asking strategic questions that lead people down the path to either hire you or decide this is a bless and release situation. This isn't a good fit. Once you've done that, you've done a well done discovery. Now you move to step 4, which is the proposal. Now, sometimes people think this is like, I'm talking a formal proposal. No, I'm actually just talking about a really clear, easy way to lay out how somebody can get their problem met, their need solved, that want, solution. So that's what happens in proposal. And then you move to step 5, which is the close. And this is a very specific language that needs to happen to allow for somebody's brain to make a decision, a yes or no decision. So that's the selling staircase and the sales conversation.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I teach it is because too often people are trying to skip steps as the therapist or as the salesperson. When you're in that business mode, it's uncomfortable to go from introduction to close. That's when it feels yucky and gross, is because you skip steps. So when you start to understand that I can actually go through all 5 steps in one conversation with somebody, or sometimes it takes multiple conversations to get through all 5 steps. But as long as you know what step you're on and what's the next step to move to, it gives people a better sense of like, okay, I've got a structure to follow here. I know what to say, or I know what to do next. And based on their response, this will say like, okay, we're off the selling staircase, bless and release, or we're moving to the next step to get to the point where we actually now get to have a working relationship.
And I think one of the things that I see therapists do quite often is get stalled, where they may have missed a buying signal, or they kind of have a sense that somebody is interested, but then they step back and kind of go, well, if you're interested, take a look at my website. And the person's like, what do I do with that?
Why should I have to do all the work? You're supposed to earn my business here. Yeah.
And it's sort of this, I don't want to have that conversation about, so here's how, here's the invitation to work with me. And that's, I think, where I really challenge therapists to recognize that's the sales conversation. And actually, you're building safety in that. By being willing to go there, I'm encouraging my clients to understand I can go there therapeutically as well.
Yes.
But if I back off from asking, would you like to work together? How are they going to trust that I'm going to engage within the therapeutic relationship? Because that's a
great.
I am inducting them, my potential client, into how I work.
Yes.
And I need to be consistent and show them I'm capable of holding that container. You actually, before we got on the interview, you were sharing you had a story about an experience you had, and I'd love to have you talk about that, because it's more than just has a person said yes. There's what happens once they've said yes that impacts the sales relationship too.
Yes, yes. Well, because realistically, especially for a therapist, frankly, is that in a way, you're having to re-earn somebody's business every time.
Yep.
Because unless they buy a package of sessions with you, which I've never had a therapist say to me, Nikki, buy 10 therapy sessions from me. Like, that's just never happened.
It actually goes against some of our ethical guidelines, which is why
that would explain. Okay. And so therefore, in a way, you're having to re-earn somebody's business to take the next step with you every single time when they're deciding whether or not they're going to schedule their next session with you. There still is that that important piece of earning that business. And so my story that I shared with you is that I have re-entered therapy this last year, and
Like many.
and was looking for somebody to help me. And I was interested in a very specific modality. So I found somebody who had training in this modality that I was interested in. And I'm not sure if I'm calling it what you call it, but I call them modality. So I'm not
That's
sure.
right.
If that's
No, you got it
okay,
right.
that's a good term. Okay. And so the first thing that happened was we had a very quick call, and she explained her qualifications, and I said, great, like, can I schedule? I think I even had to ask her, like, can I schedule, how can I get on your schedule? Like, she wasn't really making it that easy for me. And she said, okay, well, and she gave me a time and a date. And then before we got to the first appointment, she sent me an email that says, I'm so looking forward to our first session. I ask that you show up 10 minutes early. I will also be 10 minutes early, and we'll get started. So I show up 10 minutes early, like her email says, because I like to be on time. So I'm going to show up when she suggests that I show up. And she doesn't show up in the first 10 minutes, and she doesn't show up for 5 minutes after the appointment. So now I'm like, did I get the time wrong? But her email clearly states, like, here's the link, everything. So now I'm like, kind of, should I be worried about her? Like, is she okay? So I'm kind of in this panic mode. So then I text her, and then I call her, nothing. So then I send an email. Well, then she shows up about, another 7 minutes later. So now she's 10 minutes, officially she's 10 minutes late for our first appointment, but really by her standards, she's 20 minutes late for our first appointment. So that's my first impression. And so I'm already, I'm in a pretty vulnerable state. This is why I'm having therapy. And so we have our session, and then we schedule our next session. Next session time comes around, but I don't get the link from her. So now I'm like desperately looking for the link and messaging her like, hey, are we still on? Like, are we meeting? So then she's like, oh, yeah, here's the link kind of response. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that seems weird. And she's like, oh, I think I had you on a different day. Something's going on with my calendar. And I was like, okay. And so then we schedule our third session, and she doesn't show up for that one either. To which I'm texting and messaging her again, going like, hey, are you okay? And then I get a call from her, and she's like, yeah, I don't know what happened, but like, are you okay? And I was like, well, not really, because I was waiting to have this session with you. I really need to talk. But she's like, well, as long as you're okay, let's just reschedule it. And then I was like, you know what? I think I said yes initially, but at this point, there's been so much rapport and trust broken with this idea of like, okay, I'm in a vulnerable state. My job is not to manage your calendar. Your job is to show up on time. I'm showing up on time. I'm here to work, but you're not. And so I ended up sending her a message, which was, thank you so much. And I appreciate who you are. And I just feel like I'm just not the right, frankly, client for you, because I can barely manage my days, much less your calendar. And this is just not working. To which she was like, yeah, I get it. Okay, good luck. I was like, wow.
So to those watching, don't do that.
Oh, because I said to you at the beginning, like, if any of my clients had shown up and said, Nikki, this is an experience I'm having with somebody who I'm paying money, and I don't care what it's for, I would have said, vote with your wallet, fire the person, because they're not showing up. They're not making a good first impression. They're not creating safety for you, which, I kind of feel like a therapist relationship, safety should be a primary goal.
Yes.
And so showing up on time is a safety measure. People trying to track you down for an appointment, it just breaks rapport, it breaks the safety, and it's just not good business, frankly.
Yeah.
And so then I ended up having to go find somebody else who wanted to then know, like, who were you seeing before? Why did that relationship break down? And now the new therapist is like, wow, that's so interesting, because they know each other. So now it's created this like, well, now I feel like I'm not trying to badmouth her. I'm just being honest about what
Yeah.
happened. And I'm saying to her, look, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, if you cannot show up to appointments on time, I'm not the right client for you. Like, I'm
Right.
kind of a stickler about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But what I love about this story is it's a reminder to everyone watching that we are in the sales process as therapists every session. And
every
that,
session.
yeah, that certainly there are going to be clients who don't continue with us for no reason of that having to do with us, but we can actually have a part to play in that. And it's interesting, you know, this is something that I learned many years ago, is that the therapeutic alliance, that connection between client and therapist, can, if there is a breach, so a breakdown of the therapeutic alliance, and the therapist does a good job of repairing it, the relationship actually is improved. And so the sad part in that is that therapist had a real opportunity to own her mistake, and the chances are really good, if she'd done it well, you would have raved about her.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And so
And the same thing is true in sales too. Like, this was something that I used to think about especially when I was working for a company and selling somebody else's product, right? That sometimes things would happen. Things wouldn't get shipped properly,
mhm,
something would come broken, things happen. And I used to tell my sales reps this, I used to think this myself. I would be like, "Oh my gosh, here's an opportunity to earn a customer for life." Like, something went wrong. Here's an opportunity to earn a customer for life. Do something to make it so right for them, or at least at the bare minimum, make sure they understand that you care,
mhm,
that it didn't go well. And you're going to do something to make it right in whatever capacity you can,
yeah,
which sometimes is offering, a discount. Sometimes it's offering, and I'm not saying you need to discount your services, but sometimes it's about like, may I offer you some type of something to show, or even just an acknowledgement.
mhm,
Even if the person had just acknowledged that, like, Nikki, I feel like I've dropped the ball here with you, and I would love the opportunity to show you that I can show up on time, that you can count on me. And, and not that she had to go into a big story, because maybe there was something horrible going on in her life. I have no idea.
right,
And I don't want to make an assumption about, like, oh, this is a bad person, or, oh, she's got something horrible going on in her life, like anything in between. And I don't need her to tell me the story as much as I just need acknowledgement of, like, hey, I feel like I've broken some rapport with you here. I'd love to earn the opportunity to earn it back and show you I can show up on time. You know, I will make myself available, or whatever that is.
yeah,
Yeah, it really is an opportunity to get, like, the raving fan, the raving ambassador out in the marketplace who is like, you know what? I have a therapist. I recommend her highly. She's amazing.
yeah,
Like, that opportunity is now gone. And frankly, how I found my way to this person is she was referred to me. And so now the person who referred her to me will not be referring anybody else to her, because she asked, how's it going? Not well, like,
mhm,
right? So there's been a lot of opportunity here that could potentially really hurt her business, and yet she could have done something that would have
yeah,
made it right.
yeah. You know, it's such a good reminder that you know, a positive experience people will remember, but the negative experience they will hold on to. And yet, when you make take that effort to make it right, that will stick with somebody as well. So it's just recognizing that's part of how we show up. And as therapists, we should know this, and yet we don't.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
everybody has a life. Everybody has
of
challenges.
course,
Things happen. When we used to living in the Seattle area, like, we'd meet in person, traffic there is like horrific. You don't know if it's going to take you 45 minutes or 2.5 hours to get someplace. Like, things happen. And I
yeah,
think people will give grace around it, as long as it's acknowledged in a way of, like, ugh, I apologize. I want to make this right and I'm so sorry. And, whatever that is, but
Right.
just acting like, let's just go. Let's just see what happens. Like, no, that
Yeah.
doesn't really work either.
Yeah. So I'm aware we've had a great conversation, longer than I'd expected, but that's fine. Can you give me sort of the one sort of tip that you would recommend for somebody who's wanting to get more confident about their sales conversations? What should they be focusing on?
Well, the thing that you should be focusing on is, are you making it super easy for the person to take the next step with you? Oftentimes we put up unintentional roadblocks. We say like, go use my scheduling software to book an appointment. That is asking the client to do too much. And so instead saying, let's schedule your next appointment now while we're here together in the session. That's making it super easy for them, but asking them to take a step outside of the meeting or outside of that time with you, it's just too hard, frankly. So when you can make it easy for people, oftentimes they will take whatever the next step is with you because they're there in the moment. You've got their full attention. So make it easy for people and make it clear. Remember, you really are the expert. And
Mm-hmm.
so if your suggestion is, would you like another session? I think this would be a great thing for us to do together. Offer it. Stand in your place of like authority and credibility and recommend what you suggest for them. They want you to be the expert. They're coming to you for a reason. Stand in your place of credibility and power and invite them. Make it easy for them to get the next step. That was a long answer to your simple question.
I love it though. Make it easy to work with you. That is the core of it.
Yeah.
Nikki, thank you so much. I, as always, love having these conversations. You are such a wealth of information, and I am excited. So if anyone watching is looking to get better at that sales conversation process, pick up one of Nikki's books or go to her website. It's yoursalesmaven.com, correct?
Yeah. And actually, can I offer them a download of one of my
Absolutely.
ebooks? Okay.
Absolutely.
So if you actually go to yoursalesmaven.com/alchemy, then you can download my ebook on closing the sale, and it walks you through some of the steps and the language.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That is such an amazing offer. And I have a good sense that we're going to invite you back for another interview at some point. But thanks again for saying yes. And please, for those of you watching, if you've got comments or questions, put them in the comments below and let us know what you thought of this. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me today. If you're ready to work smarter and earn more money in your ideal therapy practice, book a 30-minute free coaching call with me. Visit my website at privatepracticealchemy.com and click on the big purple Schedule Time with Me button. And if you're in your first year of private practice, sign up for the next cohort of my 90-day Private Practice Alchemy Accelerator Group. Groups start in January, May, and September. You can register for the next cohort on my website. Thanks for listening.